What's up everybody, Pete here from the Sunday Drive, and today we're coming at you with a video from a unique situation. Basically, we have three different brands of headers in front of us. We have Speed Engineering, Kooks, and American Racing, and we're gonna do a comparison video for you, so stay tuned. So welcome back to the channel, everybody. Quick disclaimer, none of these exhaust headers are technically legal in the United States, although two of them do have catalytic converters on them. So depending on where you live, you might be able to run these. And anything in this video will be linked in the description below if you want to purchase those. The American Racing and the Kooks specifically, anytime you make purchases of those, it does help our channel out. So we do appreciate it if you want to do that. So like I said, we are coming at you with some headers. These are long tube headers from Speed Engineering. These are from Kooks, and these are from American Racing. Now, unfortunately, the American Racing headers aren't actually for a C7 Corvette, so it's not a direct comparison between all three, but we're still going to be looking at the workmanship, the quality of materials, the welds, the flanges, and things like that. The routing is gonna be a little bit different, and the diameter pipe is gonna be a little bit different on American Racing, but overall, what comes with the kit is kind of a general idea of what you might expect when you buy from any one of these brands. So let's get into it. Even though this is a high quality material and it's the same thickness as the Kooks, the layout is not exactly the same for the Silverado as the Corvette. If you look at these pipes before they go into the collector, they are much straighter. So they're almost touching in here. That fitment is pretty impressive. So that's nice and compact. And what that does is, one, it's easier to install, it takes up less space, but it also kind of keeps the heat in a little bit better. And you do want some amount of heat for your exhaust gases to promote scavenging. But on the Speed Engineering, you can see there's a lot of twists and turns in here, and there's these like welds midway through these pipes, so it's not like one clean straight bend. Even here there's a weld, and it's like a ground down weld, so not as tight, not as compact as this, which has no welds along the whole thing. And I could say the same thing for these American Racings. They have a nice collector, it's nice and compact, and right before, all these pipes are like snuggled in with each other. They're very tight. It's a lot straighter, very compact. And it seems like them and Kook use a similar method to mandrel bend these, whereas Speed Engineering kind of has theirs pieced together. And this is on the driver's side, same thing, nice and compact here. And it's really visible, the differences between these. There's a lot more pipe on the Speed Engineering just based on how inefficient the design is. This, the Kooks, they have more of like a swooping back kind of feel to them, where the second port is going back at far more of an angle than the Speed Engineering. And if you just even look at the bends and the how they're all kind of routed, this looks like they tried to get it similar to the Kooks, but they just could not get the tolerances or the tightness as the Kooks. And here you can even see like the height difference between the Speed Engineering and the Kooks. These look a lot taller, but the diameter of the pipe is technically the same. Something else I'm gonna just try, and I don't know how it's gonna sound, but I'm gonna tap these with metal to see if you can tell the difference between which one is thinner. So this has much less like a resonant frequency, doesn't sound as high pitched. It sounds like a deeper kind of tone, and that's definitely has something to do with the thickness of this metal. This is 2 gauges thicker. I'm hoping that this will also reduce valve train noise, and that sound, it almost sounds like air being like a vacuum cleaner, like when you're under hard acceleration with these pipes. There's not much insulation from sound. Now, another thing that I noticed is how the headers connect to the X pipes. So the Speed Engineering headers, as you can see, is straight where it connects to the X pipe. So I don't really like that. And when we did a test fit, it did not bode well for adjustment with the headers, X-pipe, and then the mufflers, it was kind of fighting us. The Kooks, on the other hand, have this ball end on it, right? So you can put this flared end from the X-pipe on, and you can kind of get a little bit of adjustment out of it. So you get a little movement, which is really great for when you're trying to fit it up perfectly. Same thing with the American Racing. It has a similar style, a little bit more of a ball flare on here, and it has the flange permanently mounted. It's kind of captive on the header. So that's kind of a nice little change or addition for clamping the header to the X-pipe. But personally, I think I'm gonna prefer the Kooks over all three for that. So the next thing I'm noticing is the flanges. If you look at the finish on this flange, it's not as clean as the other two. So you can see that this is a nice smooth finish. Another thing to notice is that the pipe coming out of this flange is almost perfectly flush. There's very little lip or anything here to interfere with airflow or create any sort of turbulence. Now, if we go over to the Speed Engineering, it's kind of hard to notice, but there's a very defined lip right here where the weld is around all of these. So that bump right there is not a perfectly smooth exit for the exhaust gases, which is not ideal. Another thing about how these pipes meet with the flange is they're not perfectly circular. It's kind of like an oval, whereas the other two brands are more of a circle kind of shape. And same thing here with the American Racing. It's a very smooth transition. In fact, you can see that they did some grinding here to make that a nice smooth transition without any turbulence. At first glance, you would say, oh, well, the Kooks and the ARH headers, they don't even have a weld that goes all the way around. But you really don't need that. Whereas the Speed Engineering might fool you at first because it does have this really nice looking weld that goes all the way around. And this looks like a machine weld, but I can't really tell. All right, so now we can compare the X-pipes. Now, with both of these brands, Speed Engineering and the Kooks. Now, I don't have the ARH X-pipe, but you need to buy the appropriate X-pipe for those headers. You can't buy Speed Engineering X-pipe and save some money and go with Kooks headers or vice versa. The problem with the X-pipe on the Speed Engineering is this bend right here was wrong. It was fighting us for many hours. I kid you not, probably 4 hours of trying to get this and this to properly have the angle that we needed so that the rest of the exhaust fit. And that's why, as I said earlier, I really like this flared fitting so that you can kind of get a little bit of wiggle room with adjusting, because right off the bat, you can make this angle perfect, and then everything beyond it should fit. After that, you do have this same kind of slip with the clamp connector style. So these are all straight. There's not much adjustability there. But I will say this, Kooks thought about how difficult it is to tighten both clamps up in the tunnel if these pipes are the same length. But basically on the Speed Engineering, since they're both the same distance, you had this situation where you couldn't have both clamps kind of horizontal to or perpendicular to the ground, right? So you had to have it like tilted up like this and then like this. And the problem is you can't really get a wrench on it very well if it's up like that, so you can't crank it down as tight as you want either. So I really did not like that because it kind of had another angle like this too, where it was hitting the tunnel plate. So that's just something that to me is a big deal. If you notice here, there is some damage. That is because I had to beat this in with a hammer in order to clear the rear differential or the rear transmission. So that was banging, and another part that was interfering with the fitment was on the actual header, which I'm going to show you next. And as you can see, there's tons of clearance between the spark plug wire and the primary coming out of the head, which was not the case on the Speed Engineering headers. So they were actually making contact with the rubber on the spark plug wire and melting it. So I threw these insulators on, which now it's not as critical, but it's still nice to keep the heat off of them. So another thing between these two is that the Speed Engineering does not have a bracket here that kind of keeps the alignment between these pipes proper. They do have these hangers for the exhaust hanger, so that's okay. But like I said before, this is where I had to dent it in to clear the transmission. The Kooks do have this nice little bracket here with some play in it, so you can adjust it properly and then crank it down so that it does not move at all. Now, when comparing the hardware that comes with these kits, I will say that I think Kooks comes out ahead. Basically, they give you the best gaskets of the kits. It's a multi-layer steel gasket. It's not OEM Chevy, but that's nice that they give you these, because most companies, and unfortunately even American Racing gives you these like really cheap quality gaskets that are known to and will blow out over time. They don't hold up well. So don't ever install these if you have the choice. The other thing that is really great about the Kooks kit is these bolts. It comes with the Stage 8 locking fasteners, and essentially what you can do is, after you tighten the bolt down, you can add on one of these locks, and it can fit at a bunch of different angles. It's got like a 12 point on it. And then you fit this locking clip. And this will stop the bolt from backing out at all. So that's a really nice feature. Is it totally necessary for headers? Probably not, but I can't believe that this hardware came with the kit. Even Speed Engineering, you know, they do give you hardware, but it's just a regular 8.8 metric bolt. Nothing to write home about. And the American Racing looks like they give you the same bolt, or at least same profile bolt, but these at least are grade 10.9. So they're a little bit stronger than the Speed Engineering ones you get. Now, both Kooks and American Racing do give you oxygen sensor extenders if you maintain your secondary oxygen sensors. Speed Engineering does not give you that option. There is no catted option that I'm aware of. So there is nowhere to mount your secondary O2 sensors. There is one bung here for a wideband so that you can use it for tuning. And the same goes for the Kooks. This is the spot for the wideband, but you do have your ports for your secondary O2 sensors. Now, if you purchase this kit, there is no plugs that come with this, so you'll need your own oxygen sensor plugs if you want to not use your secondaries. But these aren't street legal anyway, so unless you need a secondary O2 sensor in another country or something, it really doesn't make a difference for you. All right, so we're in the engine bay, and the thing that I'm most excited about here is the amount of clearance between the header and the steering shaft. As you can see, there is a ton of space here. I can fit my fingers between it. With the Speed Engineering headers, that gap was non-existent. The headers were actually hitting the steering shaft, and there's this line that you can see on the steering shaft from where the old header was hitting it and actually wearing into it and melting it. And when I'd go around a turn, even after I removed the header and beat it in to make some clearance, the engine would twist and the steering shaft would make contact with it, and I could feel vibrations through the steering wheel, which was really annoying. Here you can see that there's tons of clearance between the spark plug wire and the header, and that's another great thing. I was having issues with the spark plug wires making contact with the headers on the Speed Engineering setup, so I bought these heat covers. It's still nice to have those to stop the wires from getting too hot, but not an issue with the Kooks. Tons of clearance, much more compact type of design. Here's a shot from the bottom. This is starting at the engine and walking back. I have the Texas speed plate to get me a little bit more clearance because the old setup was hitting and rattling. This system, you don't have to worry about that. It is solid. As you can see, when I hit it with my fist, it doesn't even budge. It doesn't vibrate or make any rattles. And there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That is your comparison between the Speed Engineering, the Kooks, and the American Racing headers and X-pipes. We couldn't do a full comparison on the American Racing X-pipe, unfortunately, but needless to say, all three will work, but only two are really up to the quality standards that I would say are acceptable. It's a tough pill to swallow for the price, but overall, you get what you pay for. If you found this video to be helpful, please give us a big like and subscribe. We have a lot more content on C7 Corvettes and Chevy Silverados, if that's what you're interested in, so feel free to check those out and stay tuned.